Hi.
Hello. Hi, Amanda. Lovely to have you on the Zoom today. Thank you so much for joining me. We have swapped to Zoom. We were just talking about it because we were going to do a Facebook Live, and that was not playing ball. So we swapped over to Zoom. So we will be putting this Zoom recording, I'll be popping it into the group. We don't have anybody live with us now, but that's okay because you'll be able to watch the recording. And obviously, if you're watching this, you're looking at it on record. So it's just lovely to have the opportunity to have a conversation with Amanda, who, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, it was just such a lovely conversation because everything she was saying about her experience, her parenting journey, all of that kind of thing, I was just like, yes, 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 I get all of that. And we really felt like our stories were very similar,
Mm.
that we were coming at things from a very kind of aligned place. And we thought it would just be lovely to share that with our respective audiences. So, obviously, invited Amanda to come and chat in the group. This is that chat, which will be put in the recording into the group. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed chatting to Amanda and connecting with her over the last couple of weeks. And I think we have a lot to talk about, and I'm sure I'm going to learn some things from her as well. We are going to talk about conscious parenting today. And for those of you watching who are in my community, you will have heard me talking about this word conscious parenting a lot. For me, it means where we get curious about what's going on for our child, where we don't assume that their behavior is negative behavior. It is a communication of something, and we look for what it's communicating. We look for what the need is, and then we can make a choice. When we are parenting consciously, we are more able, not every single time, we all know that, more able many times to make a conscious choice about how we respond, understanding what is going on for them. And always, as you're probably sick of hearing me talking about, is connection. Always looking to strengthen that connection with our child, filtering things through that connection lens, whether it's going to increase connection or break connection. So, all of that said, that is my kind of take on conscious parenting. Now, Amanda is actually a conscious parenting coach trained by Dr. Shafali, who, for those of you who don't know, is a really big name, does really wonderful work around parenting consciously. So, to find out more about conscious parenting from Amanda, I think is a real treat. So, I'm going to hand over to you, Amanda, and let you tell us your take on conscious parenting, your story, just whatever you'd like to share with us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just reminding of the conversation we had, and you were telling me about your story with your children, and I was just so dying to say, yeah, that's me too. So I think so much we share so much, and hopefully that will help your people who are in your group as well. So I'm Amanda. I run Truly Parenting, and prior to that, I was a teacher. Uh, I worked in secondary and tertiary, sort of college and sixth form. That's sort of my bread and butter was sixth form education. And then sort of when I had children and a good few years after that, I just needed a bit more of a balance and a little bit less sort of commitment into the planning and all that. So I went into support roles within schools as well. So I didn't need to do so much at the weekends. And and then from there, I've retrained. So I've left education now for 2 years. So I'm full time in my business. So that's where I'm at. Um, I indeed was trained by Dr. Shafali. I found Dr. Shafali online before Instagram. I think it was on Facebook, or no, it was a TED talk when my daughter was 6. And she's 18 now. So, yeah, we have many years of me learning and always learning about conscious parenting because it's a step by step, day by day process. So the way I see it is conscious parenting is I'd like to explain it by it's like in two ways. And one way, the first way is where you've most likely heard Shelley talk about it in terms of the techniques of regulating yourself, having been able to put in the pause, getting curious about why your child is the way they are presenting, and to be able to parent that the child in front of you. And then the second half, or even the joint first half, because they go together, is what's stopping you as a parent in deeply connecting with your child? What is it that is in their essence or in their behavior that is bringing up really big feelings? And that's where we can often start in conscious parenting. We can start with those big feelings in us, but we're never really going to start there, are we? Because when we have children, we have children, and for whatever reasons why we have children, often we don't even know why we have children. It just becomes this natural evolution in our life. And if we're blessed to be able to have children, they come to us, and we think they are there to for us to teach and guide, which is beautiful in intention. And if you are, I don't even if it's lucky, if you have a compliant child who allows you to parent in that way, then you're never going to have those lessons. But what usually happens is that even if you have one child, there's going to be things in that child that bring up those strong emotions. But for me, my story was, I had my son 20 years ago, very compliant, very easy, very pleasing. He slept well. He took his milk well, even though he was cleft palate, he had a cleft palate. But the milk went down really easily from the cup. He fell asleep. He turned into a toddler. He responded to those types of techniques, such as the naughty step to teach, and I was always very much in control of his behavior, and he was very loving. And then just after 2 years, my daughter came along, and I share this story because she literally turned my parenting world upside down. I mean, there's no doubt we don't love our children. I was, so blessed to have her. I knew that on an intellectual level, in my head level. I knew there was intellectually nothing wrong with her. There's nothing wrong with any child. They're presenting in their own way. But something really got to me about her from the get-go. She didn't settle well. She screamed a lot. She was very she wasn't pleasing. She didn't choose to please me. So therefore, if I use those techniques that I use with my son, like the naughty step, or those things that allow me to control her behavior, she would either laugh at me, or she'd just say no, or she would, I mean, not always, but it was just felt so different. Mm-hmm. So I spent quite a few years feeling quite rejected by her, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. I would never be able to say that out loud. Mm-hmm. when I was in that stage of my parenting, but it always felt that we didn't have that connection. She preferred other adults to me, and although I know she loved me, I know she wanted to connect with me, but I knew there was something that wasn't allowing that. And so for a few years I tried to change her. And I remember you saying that, Shelley, that there was sometimes, like, well, if I just did this, or if I just did that, or if I was just this. And I think the moment came when she was like 6 or 7, when she said, she was in bed one night, we're doing stories. Obviously, she chose the book. She chose how the whole bedtime ran, whereas his son would be like, I don't mind. And so I was almost like her little pupil. She used to love playing teachers. And she said, oh, mummy, she says, I'd love it. I don't really want, I would prefer it if you were more like somebody else, or I wish you weren't. I think I did hear, I wish you weren't my mummy, but that was like in a time when she wasn't happy, but she was able to express, I wish you were more like this. And I thought, wow, that's self-awareness. But I still, obviously that hurt me so much. I couldn't tell her that. And so I started Googling TED Talks. This was pre-scrolling and reels and all the amazing education online in terms of that social media space. So I went onto TED's and I found Dr. Farley, who I just watched her once, and I just went, that's me. And she taught the thing that I took from that talk was, your children are not your children. They are born whole and when we try and change them too much, when we try and move them into what we don't connect, we don't see them for who they are. And so for someone who has got the compliant nature, they will shift to please us. They turn into people pleasers, perfectionists. They might have higher anxiety. I mean, I'm not talking about the easy breezy child. I'm talking about the child, the maybe more sensitive children who really have to work hard for our love. And then you have other children who I think was more like my daughter, who is unable to give up her authentic self. Yeah. And possibly like a lot of the parents that, the children who you work with, where they are unable to give up their authenticity. They're unable to flex and change to meet the needs of others. And what we then get is battles. And so the shift I had just in that week of seeing my daughter in a different way. So I find it so frustrating that I am a conscious parent coach, because there's very few techniques that work better than the energetic shift of seeing your child differently. And that's where the poem Your Children Are Not Your Children by Khalil Gibran comes in. That I'd like to just give the first few lines of that.
Yes.
And she quoted this poem by Khalil Gibran that really sat with me, and it made me initially feel a little bit like, oh, but I'll read it and I'll if you're watching this, what comes up for you afterwards? Your children are not your children. They are the sons of life's longing itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they do not belong to you. And so when I heard that, the first thing was like a bit like, wow, what's my job? I was confused. But I remember you, Shelley, saying how you felt when you heard that. And it was, how did you feel?
I said I felt almost relief in a way, because it doesn't take away our responsibility, but we feel so much that we have to mold this child and teach this child and make them into something that society will approve of, and they will approve of us. And it almost says, no, you don't have to do any of that. You just have to almost walk alongside your child and allow them to grow into who they're meant to be. And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons that I've had, probably more recently, is that thing of just being alongside and almost, guiding, yes, and supporting and scaffolding and all those things that we talk about, but really allowing your child to be who they're meant to be as well. That's the uncomfortable part for us as parents, isn't it? That's where we feel, oh, this doesn't sit right with me, because what will school say, and what will my friends say, and what will my parents say? And that's where that becomes really uncomfortable for us. But yeah, I think that poem's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. So I think the thing that you've just hit on is sometimes the biggest conflict we have is that we might want to see our children for who they are, and to be able to walk alongside them, and to let them unfold in front of us, but whatever that means. But we are very cautious of who's watching. We don't live in a bubble. We live in society. We live in systems, whether it's a school system you operate in, or family systems, extended family, friends. And it's all that, well, my child isn't doing that. They aren't following society rules in a way that would make me feel more comfortable. Yeah. And so what do I do? So as a conscious parent, do I need to just allow them to be, or do I, from a sort of fully fledged human operating in society, do I adapt to them? Yeah. And that is the hard part of conscious parenting, because it would be lovely just to say, oh, I'll just let you be. Yeah. And that isn't what, we can't just be like that, because we operate in systems. Yeah. So we have to it's a dance. It's a dance of moment by moment, looking at what is coming up for me in my child's behavior, or even not so much in the behavior, in the way that I feel that I need to parent,
Mm.
because underneath all my loving parenting was a shed load of control.
Mm. Oh, yes.
And that is in essence what I saw, but control is really sneaky.
Yeah.
So when I went inwards and I started this journey of conscious parenting, when I was when when my children were triggering me, what after all the deep work and the coaching I had and all this, what actually came out is that I wanted to control their behavior to make me feel safe, to make me feel comfortable
Yeah. Yeah.
around society.
Yeah.
And it's not like my children were like, kicking off all the time,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
like they weren't doing anything highly inappropriate. It was, but my conditioning was that you don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
You please,
Yeah.
you avoid conflict,
Yeah.
you do as you're told.
Yeah. Yeah.
And children don't
No,
always do that.
conform to that. They don't get that message.
No, but they do. Well, I picked that message up, and
Yeah.
that's so when my daughter sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "There might be another way." Well, she
Yeah.
couldn't say it, but
Yeah.
she allowed me to find that. It was really about me, moment by moment, day by day, going, "Is this about how I'm feeling? Is it about what she's doing? Is she really doing anything that's inappropriate or shouldn't be like that?" So I had to really rethink my relationship, not just with my daughter, but with my family, my friends, the systems I worked in. Um, just being a mom in the school, just think about all the people pleasing you end up doing just to like meet the needs of not just teachers. I mean, teachers do an amazing job. They have a difficult job, but just like meeting all the requirements of the school system and of the teachers and of the friends and the parents of the friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just think how much stress is
Goes
involved
into
there.
it. Huge amount. Did you find as well, Amanda, that you had to rethink your relationship with your very conformist child? Because obviously, this is where our story is very similar. And we both had our first child was very easygoing, very adaptable, did what we asked, made us feel like we had this parenting thing sussed. And then both of us, our second child came along and kind of turned that, as you said, turned that parenting journey on its head. But I very much found when I realized and kind of began to understand myself and what was going on, I had to really look at that relationship with my daughter and kind of think, I don't want her becoming this person who always feels they have to please other people and has to be good and has to conform. I want her to be more like her brother, actually. I want her to, stand up for herself and say no when she doesn't want to do something. So, how did that go for you?
Um, well, the first few years, it felt like I was concentrating on the relationship with my daughter. And then I heard something that gave me that realization that you had with your first child. And it was somebody who said that for compliant and sensitive children, or children who are more inclined to give up their own true self for others, is like how dangerous our messaging can be. And I never thought of the harm of my messaging
Yeah.
was giving. Now, I don't, it's very easy to self-blame, to have that parental guilt, and conscious parenting is all about, right, so what now? We're in this present moment, what now? That was the past, but you still have to reflect on it. And as soon as I had that realization, that's when I started going, actually, what am I telling my compliant child?
Yeah.
What message do I want them to have?
Yeah.
And I'm continually recorrecting some of the messages that I gave. But I think it's important that it's all about parenting the child in front of us. And if we are less, maybe the more strong-willed child, or the child who's unable to give up their authentic self, um, they are one way,
Mm,
and our other children are another way.
mm, mm.
But what's right for the other child is not necessarily right for them.
Yeah,
So you have to be very careful what feels right for them.
yeah,
And yes, having those like little subliminal dropping the seed all the time. Well, what
mm,
do you think? So it's about ask for me, it was about not just going with the strong will to keep the
mm.
peace or
Yeah,
to keep harmony in the family. It was all about asking them what did they want? Well,
yeah,
what feels good for you? You're
yeah.
important too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Giving
You
them
don't need to
choice as
solve all your
well.
friends' problems. You don't need to be the
Yeah,
peacemaker. You don't need.
yeah.
But saying that, if people are naturally great at bringing people together, you don't want to kill that off either.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. That could be their natural strength, couldn't it? As I think as long as they're not doing it at their own detriment, as long as they're not doing it where their feelings are being ignored. And I guess there's so much more around that now, where with the nervous system, we understand that when you have that quiet child who's always doing their work, never causing a fuss, just as friends with everybody, that can be a little bit of a warning sign. And we have to look at it. Yes, in reality, as a teacher for both of us, that's a teacher's dream, that child that just does whatever you ask them. And you often are so busy dealing with other children who are not compliant in that way or can't pay attention or can't work in that way, that child is just an easy win. And we now understand that we have to really look at those children as well, don't we? Because they are the ones who may be very anxious. They may be the ones that are pushing their own needs down in order to not be visible or not to cause a fuss. Not always. You get children who are very happy, getting on with things and abiding by the rules and that kind of thing. But it's natural for children to push back at times. And if you're never getting any pushback, then you have to look at what messages have they taken on. So I guess
Absolutely.
it really spreads out, doesn't it? It's conscious parenting, but it's almost just conscious adulting and teaching. And it's just seeing people in a different way through that lens that you talk about, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the thing with conscious parenting is that when I'd like to sort of maybe concentrate a little, not sort of go through the lens of high sensitivity, because I know that's something that you may have in your group in terms of like
Yeah,
sensory and sensitivity,
yeah,
but not for all, but for some. But if you have a highly sensitive child, whether they're strong-willed or not,
yeah,
because you can have highly sensitive, highly strong-willed children, and they're often the ones that are you'll come, you start to question how you're parenting them because nothing feels like it can work.
yeah.
But the more sensitive you are to your surroundings, the more likely, especially if you have a more of an easygoing or a compliant nature, the more you can come away from yourself. So you come away from your true self. And what you do is you build this huge ego around you of the people pleasing, the perfectionist, the things that keep you safe. And
Mm,
you'll take that into adulthood.
yeah,
And so the more sensitive your child is, it's even more imperative that we can become a little bit more conscious of how our messaging affects those highly sensitive children. Because as you say, they might be sitting quietly in the corner. I'm not saying all sensitive children are like really like, just they're not these fragile, sensitive souls.
mm,
They're sensitive in the ways that they feel deeply and they absorb the environment a lot more quickly. It's like wearing their nervous system on their sleeve rather
yeah,
than underneath.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think the more sensitive you are and the more able you are to mold to others, the more you lose yourself. And for me, my conscious parenting journey is about finding my true self.
mm,
So then I can take away some of these little big ego masks. So
mm,
then I can connect with my children because I don't think they could really, really connect with me because I was wearing a big old, lots of roles to
yeah,
keep myself safe. So
mm,
when you start just beginning to feel a bit more comfortable not being so people pleasing or perfectionism or controlling
mm,
or high achieving or needing to be seen as something
yeah, Yeah.
to make you feel okay,
Yeah.
then the more your children will see you, and the less likely they are to lose themselves
Yeah.
in their adulthood. So it's about us finding ourselves, and for our messaging to mean that our children don't have to lose themselves as much.
As much.
But
Yes.
we
Yeah.
need to remember that we live in society, we live in, as Dr. Shafali says, we live in the form world.
Mm.
When we talk about conscious parenting, it can feel like this conceptual, spiritual part. But
Mm.
really, she very much acknowledges that we live in the form world, we live in this real, tangible world.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we have to really think about who we want to be in the world and um, how this world can actually affect us. So we could be the most conscious parents. We
Mm.
could be like the most conscious parents, but our children will get shifted and shaped by their environment as well. And we have to allow that to a certain
Mm.
extent.
Mm.
Their friends will shift and shape them. The
Yeah.
messages they get from this internet will shape them,
Mhm.
from the news, from the walking down to school, from any part of their world will
Mm.
start. But if we can have the
Yeah.
message that we accept them for who
Yeah.
they are, then
Yeah.
they might shift and shape, but then they can come
Come
back.
back. Yes, absolutely. It's that connection with us as their parents that is the first and the most important, isn't it? It's so crucial. And I think what you talked about as well is if we can strip down our layers and we can find more of our true self, that allows our children to do the same. And I think that's where, when we do make a mistake or when we do something which we wish we hadn't done, and actually being open and honest about that, that was a huge learning curve for me. With my daughter, I would never have gone to her when she was little and gone, oh, I'm so sorry, I overreacted to that, or let me understand that better.
Yeah.
Even my son when he was little, but as he got older and I realized I had overreacted, I had misunderstood and kind of, done something, put in something that wasn't helpful, I could go to him and say, I'm really sorry about that. I've made a mistake. Can you help me understand more? Or can we do that again? Or shall we take another bit of that, or in a different way? And gosh, that was a huge learning curve. The difference that that made for our relationship, it meant I could be more vulnerable. I could, connect better with him. But what it did was gave him space to be able to do that as well. And slowly he would come and go, Mom, I'm really sorry I shouted about that. I didn't mean to. Can I talk to you again about it? Or, it blew my
Wow.
mind how we could have that stronger connection because I was willing to be vulnerable. It wasn't his place to do that first. It was my place to do it first. And when I could do it, it gave him permission to do it. And that was really powerful. And it's meant, I don't think I was very vulnerable with anybody before then, but what that's allowed me to do is just become more vulnerable with many more people, which has been such a blessing. And I think we talked about the fact that as hard as this journey's been, it's been the best journey. We wouldn't change anything about it, because the struggles and the realizations and the stripping down of everything has meant that we feel we've come out. And we haven't come out because we're still walking the journey, but we've progressed and we're in a better place than we would have been. I just can't even imagine where I would be as a parent of a 19 and a 24-year-old now, if I was still that person that I was kind of 15, 17 years ago. I am so pleased I've gone on this journey, and it's meant I can be a better parent for sure.
Well, yeah, and what it's given you is the connection to ride the ups and downs,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
parenting is messy.
yeah,
Parenting is always something that we have to keep resetting, rethinking, repairing.
absolutely. Yeah.
And it's whatever you see from somebody else's relationship, you don't see their energetic connection. And
Mm.
I think that's what I don't think anyone can see my energetic connection I have with my children. I can't see anybody else's,
Mm.
but I know I have it.
Mm.
I know I have an energetic connection that I feel that even when things are going to get tough, and they go up and down, don't they, in life,
Yeah.
is that there is a connection that I know we can work through. I can't control the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I can't control the outcome. I think that's really hard as parents. And I think that's one of the things that, if you haven't heard of conscious parenting and you hear the message like, well, you can't control the outcome and all that, it puts you off because, well,
Mm.
you want to be able to control that. You
Yeah.
adore your children so much.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that they have friends, or they don't fall
Yeah.
out, or they can be successful, or they have the same opportunities as everybody else, and they're
Yeah.
protected and they don't hurt themselves. Like you you can, to a certain extent,
Mm.
protect. We know we've all got maternal instincts and paternal instincts, but at the end of the day, we can't control so many outcomes.
Mm.
And
Mm.
when you try and control, it's almost like you attract.
Mm.
And the more we can release the outcome and just work on the parenting, the connection,
Yes.
then the outcome will be the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really valuable message for a lot of parents in my community who are fighting hard day in and day out to get accommodations and, get school on board with certain things. And I'm definitely not against that. But sometimes I see that all of that fighting comes at a cost to the relationship with their child, and they're so busy fighting and wanting and pushing forward for all these accommodations, but in the moment they lose, their mental health struggles, their well-being suffers. The connection with their child becomes less strong than it may have been. And I completely get it. I did it myself. But sometimes you do almost just want to say to people, just step into where you are. Just make sure that connection with your child is still there, even
Mm.
with all that thing. And you go into fight mode with school, you're in fight mode all the time. So you're still going to be fighting with your child and your partner, and you're going to be protecting that child against everybody. And it doesn't always have the outcome that we hope for. So yeah, your message about staying connected, enabling you to weather those storms. If you've got the connection, you can take on the challenges, but the connection has to be there
Yeah.
first and foremost.
And I think it's important we don't, because again, I feel like with conscious parenting, or however it's described, it's like, it's not permissive parenting. It's not allowing our child to do whatever they want. Our job is to set
Yeah,
appropriate
yeah,
boundaries. But in conscious parenting, we look at every boundary. Well, why have we put that in place?
yeah,
Is it for their own well-being? Is it for
yeah,
us to feel in control? Is it because we're worried what other people will think?
yeah,
And it's just to strip back and having very few stone boundaries, those absolute boundaries, and
yeah,
lots of sort of negotiation
yeah,
for the other things, especially if child dependent on the child, because so many children, if you open up some negotiation and
mhm,
they feel like they've got some autonomy, especially
yeah,
strong-willed children, you
yeah,
give them some autonomy, it goes like so far.
yeah.
um and sometimes you'll need a stone boundary. It's an absolute no. And that's okay, of course
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And our children, and many of our strong-willed children, they want to feel secure within those boundaries, don't they? They want to know that we're in charge.
Yeah.
Actually, we're captaining the ship. We're going to keep them safe. But yes, if like you say, just what do you think about this, or how do you think we could help? I heard a lovely thing one time about the problem sits on its own chair, and you and your child sit opposite it, and you both work on the problem together. And your child, it's not you versus your child, it's you and your child working on that problem and looking at how you can get through it together.
I
And
love
that's
that.
really, yeah, that's so beautiful. I think it might have been Eliza Fricker, give the problem its own chair, something like that. But yes, that was really meaningful to me.
That's beautiful.
I'm siding with my child. I'm this side, and the
Yeah.
problem's there, and I'm with them. So yeah,
Well, I
really,
can see that would work for things. I mean, devices in terms of technology. I think that every parent has those battles,
absolutely.
and some children really can't self-regulate. I don't know many children who can self-regulate because
Yeah,
they're so addictive. They're
yeah,
designed to be addictive.
yeah,
I like the fact that, let's imagine you put the Xbox on the chair, or not even seeing the
Mm.
Xbox as a problem, but the usage is the problem. And
Yes,
us two are
yes,
sitting opposite. And
yeah,
so, well, okay, so we've identified that things have got to change. What do you think? And
yeah,
how would the usage problem be changed if you had
yeah,
some ideas?
yeah,
And I really like that. And I remember talking about curfews or picking up my children from parties.
yeah.
And like for some children, like 12 o'clock is like for me, it was midnight. That is it. Like for my
Mm.
parents, like
Mhm.
it was it.
Yeah.
and and you could say, well, what's wrong with that? And not so much, but depending on your child,
Yeah,
you're going to have huge battles. And it's not about managing the battles, but it's about managing, making sure that they're safe and they can work with you. So
yes.
seeing that chair analogy that you used,
Yeah, yeah,
I remember sort of saying, well, okay, so my issues are if I don't know what time you're coming home, I won't be able to sleep.
yeah,
So I need some time. Okay,
yeah,
so over to you. So what time? And then she was like, 3 in the morning. Well, it wasn't that, but
yeah, yeah,
okay, so that's not going to work.
yeah,
Or I can phone the parents
yeah,
and check if you could stay over. Okay, so that's not an issue. So then it comes back to me. Okay, so
yeah,
what? So between us, we worked out how she was going to get home, when
yeah,
she was going to come home, what happens if she doesn't get back, what
yeah,
I would do,
yeah.
and so I mean, it all sounds pretty obvious stuff, but for some children,
Mm.
that feels so much more workable.
Yeah, yeah.
And people, especially if, like, if children have got PDA or some form
Mm.
of defiance or something like that, maybe a more further along the path of sort of defiance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no expert on that, but I know for sure there's ways of working with.
Definitely. And I think it makes that child feel like they're seen and heard. I'm not
I love
controlling
that.
everything about you. It lets them know that their voice, it matters as well. And I always found with my son, when I gave him that bit of autonomy, he always came up with things that were actually much stricter than I would have
So
imposed.
true.
It's, if I said, oh, we can't manage it this way, how else could we do it? I, in my mind, had something which was probably a lot less, kind of firm than what he came up with. But it meant that he felt, oh, I have a part to play in this. Now I've got some buy-in as well because I've made a choice with you. I've bought into that a little bit more. This isn't just you telling me what I have to do. And again, comes down to the control, doesn't it? We have this fear somehow that if we give some of the say to our child, they'll take control and then they'll just, won't listen to anything. I found the complete opposite to be true. When I gave a little bit of control and autonomy and say, um, it meant we collaborated so much better and there was less resistance, there was more cooperation, there was just more of that good stuff. And it's no magic wand. It's, like we've both said, we're still both working on it every single day. So there's still those times when I go, oh, hold on a minute, that doesn't feel quite right. I'm going to need to do something else here. It's a constant journey. And what I've definitely learned is when your child gets to be 24, you're still a parent. And you're still thinking of ways you could do it differently. And now they're
Mm.
actually a grown adult. How do I navigate this scenario when there's things that I want to tell them? So yeah, it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? And
I
we have
do,
been, sorry, go
just
ahead.
to finish, yeah. So this, like, your children are not your children
Yeah,
statement, alongside giving some more autonomy, especially for children who struggle to be directed,
mm,
and putting those two together gives you, as you say, like, if they do surprise you, don't you? It's like with
yeah,
revision with children, like you tell them to revise, they won't. It's almost like they're stuck in that I've got to revise and don't know how to revise,
yeah,
and I've been told I've got to revise. Well, okay, so putting some space in for
yeah,
schoolwork, say, right, well, what would work?
yeah,
um I trust you.
yeah, yeah, big one.
And if you don't, and if they don't, like almost like those natural consequences. Okay, so if you don't, then
Mm,
the natural consequences that you will, like if they're in the school system, there will be something that gets picked up and
yeah,
something, and which is really hard, I know, because for certain children, they just really do struggle to
yeah,
do anything out of that school setting, and it doesn't feel right. And that's for
yeah,
another discussion. But
yeah,
just giving them some more autonomy
yeah.
means that we are seeing them for who they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that trust is such a big thing, isn't it? I think we almost we start off with this, or there is this perception in society that if you give them a little bit, they're going to take everything they can. If you don't expect things of them, they're not going to make anything. I think that's so skewed, and I think if we can look through a different lens at our child and know that they want to learn, they want to do well. They want to do whatever is in their nature to do. We just have to help them and support them in order to be able to do that. So this has been a fabulous discussion. I'm conscious that we are 45 minutes in after saying we'd be 30, and that's absolutely fine because this has been such a lovely opportunity to talk to you. And yeah, I feel very kind of, yeah, just very aligned with everything that you talk about. And it's been really lovely to hear things from your point of view as well. So thank you for chatting to us today. And we'll pop this on our group. You can share it in your group, and then we can just maybe help parents, give them a little nugget or two, or help them just to feel a
Mm,
bit better about themselves. That's always the thing.
mm.
It's never ever to blame and shame, because that helps nobody. If you can help parents feel, okay, I can do this, or I can just alter something here, or I can see this differently, that can be massively empowering. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And
thank you.
as you said before, it was so exciting when we first met to know that our story is different but so similar as
So
well.
similar, so many
It's-
similarities. Yeah,
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 yeah. So
really good.
thank you.
Thank you for chatting
Okay.
today, Amanda. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye now.